Hello and welcome to my Knights of the Fallen Empire Chapter 2 Master Mode Guide. Now before I begin the chapter, I just wanted to make a mention that this chapter is possibly the easiest one out of all of them. And this is because throughout the chapter you have a buff on you, which is called Valkyrian's Guidance. Every time you're in combat, you will be healed for a certain amount. The lower health you are, the more you'll get healed. So for this chapter, your gear is somewhat irrelevant, although having better gear means you can finish the chapter more quickly. Alright, without further delay, let's just jump right into it. So you'll be met with a few Sky Troopers along the way. They're all standard mobs, so if you have an AoE, such as a Sorcerer, your 4 Storm is quite a big AoE, you can use that to easily and comfortably defeat all these enemies. Other than that, they don't really do that much damage, so just take it one mob at a time. And now you'll have another group that'll spawn. I'm going to try to line of sight them around that broken ship. It somewhat works, doesn't really work that well, but at least it was worth a shot. They do cast this ability called Snipe. It's a long cooldown, but it's a long cast time, sorry, but it actually doesn't do that much damage. So you don't need to worry about it too much. After defeating them, I usually take the right path, just because the enemies are more clumped up together. Easier for me to AoE them down. But it doesn't really matter which way you go. Now you can try to line aside these mobs behind that debris, but there's no real reason to. But you can if you wish. After these 3, there's going to be a strong Sky Trooper that'll appear, a strong mob. He's relatively straightforward, but still have to watch out for the damage that it can potentially do. And make sure to use your interrupts whenever you can. That'll become very important in later chapters. There are certain abilities in the later chapters that you absolutely must interrupt, so getting into practice and learning how to interrupt is pretty vital to completing all the chapters. Now at this stage, you'll be fighting 2 of your iconic characters in your story. It's different for every class. But if you're someone, let's say like a sorcerer or an assassin, even an agent, you can potentially CC one of them and focus all your energy on the other mob. And once they're killed, then you can go move on to the other one. Unfortunately for me, as a Juggernaut, I don't really have a long CC. So what I usually do is I will use my AoE Fear and then follow it up with my Force Choke and then my backhand on the alternate target. That gives me around 12 seconds of CC, which should be enough to defeat one mob. So since every class is going to have different enemies to fight with, just have to make sure you use your interrupts, use your CCs and your stuns, and overall use your defensives if need be, but otherwise you should not have any issues because of Valkyrian's buff on you. Alright, so let's just jump right into it. So I'm going to start with Darth Barris. I will use Saber Reflect so I can reflect his Force Lightning. I will then use my AoE Fear to take Norman Carr out of combat. And that should give me enough time to defeat Darth Barris. The fight is relatively straightforward, so no one should really have any issues with these two. Okay, so after defeating them, you're gonna go into a cinematic with Valkorion. I'm just gonna skip right ahead. And then you will begin at a location within the Empire, where you will be surrounded by Imperial soldiers. Now, kill the first 3 that you encounter. The rest you can actually sidestep very comfortably, and I'll show you how to do that. Alright, now that they're done, just go around the right and jump directly down. Make sure you keep an eye out on the strong droid on my left, because he does patrol around. Just jump over all these ledges and these fences. When you reach the steps, just jump upon this ledge and then do another jump on the railing. Hug the left. And just keep following what I'm doing here. And now you've avoided that entire area. You can also avoid these Sith as well by hugging the ledge on the right. Same thing with the mobs up here. You can just go hug the right. Traverse the rock. Now I tried jumping up here, it didn't work for me. If you're a sorcerer with force speed, you might have some better luck. But if you don't, you can just jump on that ramp behind the pole and you'll be fine. Now for this strong mob, I'm just going to knock it off the edge because it doesn't have any immunity. And that's it, you just save yourself maybe 30 seconds. Then you take the speeder and you're gonna meet with Darth Mar, who's gonna fight you. He doesn't really have that many abilities. He's got a charge, he's got some few instant melee attacks, and then he has an ability called Death Field, which is the one thing that you should avoid. I mean, you can interrupt it if you want. I just let him cast it, and I get some free damage in while he's busy casting the ability. And that's the Death Field I was talking about. Darth Mar does have boss immunity, so you can't really stun him, only interrupt. Now that big chunk of damage I took was because Darth Mar pulled me in as soon as he finished Death Field. And since I'm usually sitting around 300 or 350 ping, the game thought that I was within the AoE as soon as Darth Mar pulled me in. Alright, once you defeat him, you're going to be in a cinematic. I'm just going to skip right ahead. As you wake up on this area, go up to this part here, and there will be a monolith that will spawn, or a lesser monolith. Since this monolith does not have any boss immunity or any physics immunity, just stand on the edge, let him come to you, and just knock it off. That's it. If you don't have a knockback, the monolith is very straightforward, doesn't really have any special abilities, so you shouldn't have any issues. Alright, now we're making our way to the final encounter of this chapter. It's a greater monolith, or just a monolith. It has basically 3 abilities that you need to watch out for. One is its auto attacks, which actually do a decent amount of damage, even to me as a tank. It also has another ability that will knock you back and cover the area with purple flames. And it's really easy to run out of, so if you have any movement increasing effects, like for speed or mad dash for warriors, you can just use that and avoid all the damage. It finally has an ability which is a front conal ability, where he will breathe purple flames in that general direction. You can interrupt it, but I usually just let him cast it because it gives me a few seconds of free damage and a few seconds where I'm not taking any damage at all. So, alright, so I'm just going to begin the encounter. if you notice his auto attacks, they're doing a decent amount of damage to me, so that's sort of what I meant. Now that's the knockback that I was talking about, and it covers that area with purple flames. He stays in that animation for an additional second, so that should give you some extra time to do some damage. Now he follows up with the front AoE ability called Terrible Shout. Just run out of it and let him cast it. But you can interrupt it if need be, so it's not a make or break thing. And that's literally all there is to the fight. Every time I fought him, he's rarely ever used a knockback, maybe twice in one fight. One is when you engage him, and the second time that he does the knockback is around, I think, 20 or 25%, so your mileage may be different, but for me it's always been 2 times. The rest of the time he's just doing auto attacks and terrible shouts, so it's pretty straightforward. And with Valkorian's buff, this fight is really trivial. So I'm just going to speed up the rest of the fight until the end. In case you want to watch the whole thing, you can change the speed settings on YouTube, but you shouldn't have any issues with it at all. If you are a DPS, however, this will be faster for you, but since I'm a tank, geared as a tank, that's why it took so long for me, but if you're a DPS, you shouldn't have any issues here. And there you have it. That is the final boss of Chapter 2 complete on Master Mode. Alright, I will see all of you in Chapter 3 of Knights of the Fallen Empire Master Mode.